C. Administration of certification programs. A replacement of a certificate. Railroads shall have a system of prompt replacement of the lost, stolen, mutilated certification systems that are responsible, accessible to certified locomotive engineers and needed for the replacement of the certificate. Operational monitoring requirements after December 31st, 1991. Each railroad to which what part applies shall be the railroad approval for the part that shall after December, the railroad to which the part applies shall, prior to the Federal Railroad approval for this program. In accordance with 242.01, the program monitoring conduct of the certified locomotive engineer performing the operational monitoring observation conducting unannounced operation compliance. The program shall be conducted so that each locomotive engineer shall be given at least one operation monitoring observation qualified supervisor locomotive engineer in a calendar year. The program shall not be conducted. Locomotive engineer shall be given at least one announced compliance test each calendar year. The unannounced test program shall test the engineer compliance with one or more provisions of the railroad operating rules, require response signals that display the less than clear aspects of the railroad operates the signal system that must comply with Part 236 chapter of this chapter. Test engineers comply with more of the provision of railroad operation timetable. Other mandatory directives are required for the affirmative response of locomotive engineers. Less favorable conditions than excited for the prior initial test. Testing engineer compliance with the provision of the railroad operating timetable. The directives violations by the engineers cited by the railroad is the cause of train accidents and train incidents and accidents report filed in compliance with the part of 225 of the chapter of the preceding year, but be conducted so that the administrative of the test is effective and distributed throughout whatever the portion of the 24-hour day of the railroad conducts its operations. Be committed to the individual testing around administrating under the prior notice of the locomotive engineer being tested, and being conducted resulting the tested required of the certified entered of the required established 240 results of the test recorded on the certificate and entered in the recorded. It's established in 215 within 30 days of the day of the test is administered. 243.05 Prohibited conduct. After December 31st, 1991, it is unlawful to operate a locomotive in train and speed exceeding maximum authorized limit at least 10 miles per hour or more over than one half of the authorized speeds, which is less. Operating whichever is less. Operating locomotive and train as any signal with a complete stop at the locomotive and train when operating a locomotive or train, any signal with a complete stop, stopping for the locomotive or train when the signal requires a complete stop before passing it. Failure to comply any mandatory directive conducting movement of the locomotive training occupying the segment of the magnet track without authority. Each locomotive engineer who has received a certificate required under this part 1 has the certificate in his or her possession while on duty on the engineer displays the one having a certificate in his or her possession while on duty on the engineer as an engineer display the certificate upon the receipt of the request of him to do so. A representative of the Federal Railroad Administration. 2. Will an officer issuing the railroad. 3. An officer in another railroad operating a locomotive or train in joint operation in the territory. Any locomotive engineer who is notified and called and operated locomotive or train or such operation which causes the locomotive engineer to exceed certificate limitations set forth in accordance with subpart B of this part shall immediately notify the railroad that he or she is not qualified to perform anticipated service, and it shall be unlawful for the railroad to require the service. During the duration of any certification interval, the locomotive engineer whose current certification moves to the railroad shall immediately notify the other certification railroad as she has denied recertification railroad as his or her certification revoked to the railroad. Nothing in his section shall be deemed to after a certified locomotive engineer duty to comply with other provisions of the chapter concerning the railroad safety. Alright, 243.07, revocation of certification. Except for provided in 240.119 in the railroad that recertifies a person as qualified locomotive engineer during the period of certification and valid is required, the information convinces the railroad that the person no longer meets the qualification requirements for the part shall revoke the person as a certificate as qualified by the locomotive engineer. Pending vocation determination under the section of the railroad shall, upon the receipt, reliable information indicated the person lack the qualification under the part that immediately suspends the person's certificate prior to the prior to and upon the sending of the person providing notice of the reason of the suspension pending of the revocation opportunity of the hearing for presiding officers other than charging officials. 3. Convey the hearing of the convene with the hearing within deadline prescribed either the paragraph C1 of the section of compliance with the collective bargaining agreement as prescribed under the paragraph D of this section. Determine that the record of the hearing with the person no longer meets the qualification requirements of the first part of the stating explicit with the basis of the conclusion reached. When the appropriate imposes the pertinent period of the revocation period of 240.117 and 240.119, retaining the record of the hearing of 3 years after the date of the decision, expected as provided by the paragraph D and F of the section of the hearing is required of the section to conduct in accordance with the following procedures. The hearing shall be convened within 10 days of the date of the certificate and suspended upon unless locomotive engine. The hearing shall be convened within 10 days of the date of the certificate is suspended unless the locomotive engineer requests and consent to delay the start of the hearing. The hearing shall be conducted with the presiding officer who can be a qualified person authorized by the railroad other or than the charging officer. The presiding officer will exercise the power necessary to regulate the conducting of the hearing of the purposes for achieving a prompt and fair determination of all materials, issues, and controversies. The presiding officer shall combine with the presiding over the hearing. Testimony of the witness in the hearing shall be recorded verbatim. All relevant and probative evidence shall be received unless the presiding officer determines that the evidence is unduly repetitive and so extensive that in lack of relevancy that it is that omission would impair the prompt or orderly, fair resolution of proceeding. The presiding officer may adopt the need of the procedure for submission of evidence written in form, examine the witnesses at the hearing, conveying, recess, adjourning, otherwise regulate course of hearing, taking another action, authorize consent of provisions that this part permitted with the law in expeditious hearing in the aid of the disposition proceeding. Parties may be heard on the behalf of those that designate them representative. Parties may be on the relevant evidence, including the testimony, may conduct such an examination of witnesses as required for the full disclosure of relevant facts. The record of the proceeding shall be closed in conclusion with the hearing of the presiding officer shall be in additional time to such information. In such an instance, the record shall be left open on such a time presiding officers grant and to the purposes after the close of the record of presiding of the ship. I'll prepare the written decision of the proceeding. The decision shall contain the findings of the facts as well as basis for the concerning all materials and the fact and presented by the record be served an employee. The railroad shall have the burden of providing the locomotive engineer conducts with compliance with the applicable railroad operation. Okay, rule. Practicing in the Part 2:19 of the chapter, a hearing required of the section in the conducting of the manner that conforms procedurally application collective bargaining agreement shall be deemed to satisfy the proper procedural requirements of the section. Hearing that required under the section is consolidated. A hearing that required under the section is consolidated in disciplinary over the hearing of the rising same of the facts instances presiding in the office of the hearing shall make the separate findings of the revocation required under the section. F. A person may waive the right to hearing providing under the section that the waiver shall be made in writing. Reflects the fact that the person has knowledge and understanding of these rights, voluntarily surrenders them, be signed by the person making the waiver. Railroad has relied on the certification of the railroad for the provision of 242.27, 242.29. So revoke the certification is if the period of the certification is valid. Railroad acquires information convincing another railroad as a revoked certification determination in accordance with the provisions of the section so that the person no longer qualification requirements for the part of the requirement to provide a hearing unless under this section is satisfied by when a single railroad holds the hearing and no additional hearing is required prior to a revocation by one of the railroad arising from the same facts. H. The period of certificate suspensions prior to the commencement of the hearing required for the section certified towards the satisfying and any application revocation period imposed in accordance with the provisions of 241.17. Any railroad providing commuter services or Class 2 railroad shall conduct a formal annual review analysis concerning the administration of the program, responding to the detected instances of poor safety conduct, certified locomotive engineers during the prior calendar year. Each review analysis shall involve the number of nature of the instances detected poor safety conduct, including the nature of the remedy action and the response thereto, the number of nature of the Federal Railroad Administrator reported to the train accidents attributed to poor safety performance locomotive. 3. The number of the type of the monitoring testing failures operation and inadequate skill performance needed for the supervisor locomotive engineers. If the conduct of the operation whether another railroad, the number of the locomotive engineers employed by the other railroad to which such invention is described in the controlling railroad certified joint operations base of the review analysis, the railroad determines what the action it will improve the safety and train operations, reduce, eliminate further incidents of that nature. If it is requested in the writing, the Federal Railroad shall provide a report of the findings and conclusion reached during its annual review analysis and effort for reporting for the nature of the detected poor safety conducted shall come capable of segregation study evaluation purposes the following manner. Incidents involving noncompliance with the Part 218 incidents involving noncompliance with Part 219 incidents complying with Part 232 and incidents involving noncompliance with other railroad operating rules involving operation of locomotives training of the operating at the speed that exceeds the maximum limit authorized incidents involving with noncompliance with the railroad operating rules. Okay, so resulting in operating a locomotive down the train of the passing signal requires a complete stop and before passing it. Incidents involving non-compliance with the railroad operating practices, training, handling, and the procedure resulting in the improper use of the dynamic brakes. Incidents involving non-compliance with the railroad operating procedures, including train holding and the procedure resulting in improper use of the automatic brakes. Incidents involving non-compliance with the railroad operating practices, including training handling resulting in improper use of the locomotive's independent brakes. Incidents involving noncompliance with the railroad operating procedures, including the training and the procedures resulting in excessive in the train of the force of levels of 10, involving noncompliance with the railroad operating practices, operating the train speed that permits the stop, being within less of the engineer's range of the vision for reporting purposes, each category detected poor safety conduct identified in paragraph D. This section shall be capable of announcing and reflecting the following: the number of the incidents in the category, the number of incidents, the total, which reflects incidents requiring for the Federal Railroad accident incident report, number of incidents within the total which are affected if results of scheduled operational monitoring effort for the reporting purposes of the category detected the safety conduct identified in the paragraph D of this section shall be capable of being announced and being annotated for reflecting the following: the nature of the remedial action taken, for the number of services are divided and by such a reflect of the following actions is selected: imposition, formal discipline, imposition of formal discipline, provisions of informal training. 2. In nature of the remedial action taken for the formal discipline, the number of events is subdivided is to reflect the following punishments will impose in the hearing office: the person withheld with the service, the person was dismissed from the employment. Other persons who are issued the demerits, if one or more of the following punishments imposed, the punishment deemed the most served shall be shown. For the reporting purposes of each category, are detected for the poor safety identifying the paragraph D in the section which results in an imposition formal informal discipline shall be noted that reflects the following: the number of instances in which the railroad internal appeals the process of the read the punishment initially imposed in the continuous hearing, and the number of the instances of punishment imposed of the railroad which reduced to the following in that needs of the National Railroad Adjustment Board, a Public Law Board, a Specialty Board adjustment on the other body of resolution disputes duly constituted under the provisions of Railway Labor Act law. Subpart E, dispute resolutions.